We can give folks another 2 minutes to join and start at 5 past the hour. Till then, I'm just going to catch up on some notes and look over what I missed. Okay, so we're at 5 past the hour, so we can go ahead and get started. Um, I can't remember. Oh, yeah, so we are recording this session. Just FYI for folks to know that we are recording this session as we do all the work group meetings. Today is 20th of October, and I do send my apologies for not being able to attend the last two meetings, but excited to be back here with everybody and hear about what's been going on with everyone and progress made on some of the things we've been working on. To start, do we have any new faces or folks where either this is their first meeting or one of their first meetings and would like to introduce themselves and what they do and how they work with open source?
Yes.
Okay,
So my name's Aaron Wislang. I'm a cloud advocate on the open source focused teams inside of Microsoft. I work with Linux, open source, and Go, on Linux Cloud Native and Go mostly.
wonderful. Welcome, Aaron. Okay, do we have anyone else who would like to introduce themselves? Okay. So it looks like first on the agenda, we have a quick meeting time reminder. Um, Jeff, do you want to give us that quick update?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, and sorry I'm camera off. I've been recovering from a cold, so thanks for taking this on, Amir.
Of course.
Yeah, so we had a hiccup with getting started on our alternating meeting times. So we had like two that were EMEA friendly, and then we had to change it kind of at the last minute for the last meeting. But we've got it on for next, the last meeting was APAC friendly. This one's early, and then the next meeting on the 3rd will be our standard APAC time. Then the one after that, our normal morning time. And then after that, we're going to switch to a new APAC time based after the time change. Northern hemisphere goes backwards, southern hemisphere goes forward. So it actually makes it easier for us to overlap times, and we can get a time that's more inclusive to all people actually. So that's not on the calendar yet, but I'll work with this getting this on the calendar and set up through the spring for the alternating time.
Awesome.
Any
Thank you.
questions on the time change or anything like that? All right. Well, sorry for the confusion for everyone, but yeah, we'll try to get that all. Make sure the calendar is always up to date.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jeff, and wishing you a speedy recovery. It is also unfortunately that time of year too, as the seasons change and get colder. I definitely was fighting off a cold upon coming back from Europe. So yeah, wishing you a speedy recovery. And yes, hopefully, yeah, we'll get get everything updated on the calendar, and ideally, if we can get them to um, the OpenSSF events folks who manage the calendars to just update it kind of indefinitely going forward, or 6 months or what have you. Yeah, and overall, are folks liking the alternating timelines? Are we getting more participation from APAC APAC community members, and do we all in general feel good about the schedule change? Yeah, okay.
I think there's also some important members like Caleb that can only make the other times.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, okay, good, good. Yeah, and of course, the intention was solely to be more inclusive and to include, folks from different time zones as well. So, great. I'm happy to hear that's going well. And yeah, so for the next meeting, November 3rd, that will be on the APAC friendly time. Cool. So I was looking at some of our previous notes talking about the charter, and looks like maybe at the last meeting we didn't have enough people to feel good about a quorum, which I believe is just it's just when you have a large enough group of people to call a vote, I believe. So is that something that we are ready for in this meeting that we have today, or is that something that maybe we should hold off on? I definitely will open this to discussion, because I'll be honest, I'm not terribly up to date on kind of all the governance and what OpenSSF is doing governance wise. So I wonder if anyone in the group, maybe Jay or Jeff, or if anyone has an update on that. Looks like we have Jeff.
Yeah, you haven't really missed anything, Amir. I think we haven't made any kind of changes or discussions on the charter in the last few meetings. We've just kind of, I think we were pretty much okay with it, and we just kind of looked around and said, hey, there's only like 5 or 6 people here. Let's put this off. So that's what we've
Okay.
done.
Okay, cool. And I take it there haven't been really any changes or updates to the charter. Oh, I'm sorry, Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, so with respect to the charter, I mean, I think really between you and Jeff as the co-leads of the working group, in absence of a quorum, a charter really is about what the norms are for the working group, and then you two dictate that. So ultimately, in absence of a quorum, and to get the charter ratified, you guys can, between the two of you, can both say, hey, yeah, let's do this. And then of course, should anyone who's a member of the working groups read the charter and say, hey, there's some things we need to change in the charter, at that time, you take a vote on whatever changes to the charter need to occur. But for the purpose of ratifying the charter, that's a you and Jeff situation. That doesn't need to that doesn't need to wait.
Got it. Okay. Okay. And maybe what we can do is I will share my screen, and actually, no, I don't think I can do that. Okay. So then what we'll do then is we'll take an action item for both Jeff and I to just to make sure that the charter, as best as it can, accurately conveys, what the norms are for the working group, and how things are to be operated. I think most of it should be perfectly fine, but I think just for due diligence sake, we'll take a look at it make sure it accurately reflects, what we're looking to do in terms of activities for the working group. And by the next meeting, we can essentially ratify or accept it. And that way it'll be formally adopted. And then, as you said, Jay, any updates to that or feedback are welcome, really anytime before or after, but it's always welcome. So we can go ahead and move forward with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've discussed it. If we add up all the meetings that we've discussed it, I think all the people that we've wanted to make sure they've had a chance to, raise any concerns have been there. So maybe not all in the same meeting, but yeah, again, right now, if anybody has any concerns, we can discuss them too. But otherwise, I think we can say, we haven't heard any concerns and we're ready to go ahead and merge it.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, great. All right, next on the agenda, we have a point here. Should we move the process for identifying critical projects to Markdown in the workgroup repo?
Yeah, I add this. This was something we were discussing last meeting. So if we go to our repo under initiatives and then identifying critical projects, we kind of have the previous work or and also links to like the Harvard studies and such. But I believe, your process for identifying that you wrote, Amir, is all, kind of agreed upon that what we're working on now, what are like our current work. Should we collaborate more in the working group people and say, hey, this is what we're currently doing, and can we just kind of cut and paste that into a markdown there, or should we keep working in that Google Doc? Because I think not everybody sees it at the top, even though it's at the top of this, meeting notes here as important documents, key documents. We don't always see that there.
Yeah, I mean, I like using GitHub because I feel like it can be a way to accurately track, feedback, comments, updates, and do it in a way that's pretty transparent. Does anyone else in the work group have thoughts on that, or feel a particular way about using GitHub for displaying, information and using it as like a platform for us to collaborate on or make updates to things on?
No, I just support the idea. I think it's better than just using a bunch of Google Docs. It's easier trackable, it's easier to show. So that's a plus one for me.
Okay. Thank you, Marco. And we have some thumbs up. I think that makes sense. Yeah, especially because, like you said, Jeff, sometimes the things can go unnoticed or they're not as easy to find. And so if we start basically just using the repo as our central body for all of this stuff, I think that will make things easier for everyone. So, Randall, you have your hand up.
Yes, I also have updates from Caleb because him and I have been working on getting criticality score for use in that context. So we don't have it 100%, but there is a lot of work that's already been updated for this use case in the criticality score. So I just wanted to say that.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, yeah. So unless we have any objections to moving the process to Markdown and putting it in the repo, yeah, we can certainly move forward. But I just wanted to make sure we heard from everyone, or in case someone didn't get a chance to provide any feedback. But are we overall all good on that? Yep. Okay. Okay, wonderful. Just wanted to provide that opportunity there. So next, yeah, on the agenda, we can have a update from Randall regarding the criticality score.
Yes, so Caleb and I met a couple times to do a couple modifications, and yeah, so we have the GitHub enumeration part already like sorted. So now we're working on the like how it would actually work. So I know that one of the line items was to describe how the GitHub repo would work. I think we can do that probably after next week because we should have it finalized about how the most optimum way for us it would work. So we could draft that out for you to add. But it's not 100% stable yet, but it should be probably by next week. I'm more or less because Caleb does put a lot of time into criticality scores. So, but beyond that, there's not really a whole lot of other updates.
I see.
But we did take all of the feedback from last session and we have tried to address as much as we can, just for the record. So
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. And just to clarify, are we talking about the criticality score in the context of the criticality score as a tool that generates a score for an open source project, or is this referring to something?
no, well, we remember that we had talked in the past about how we don't really want the physical score, but we want the other stuff, the other quantitative data that they pull, like how many contributors they have, when was the last commit. So all quantitative data, because we can pull the criticality score if we wanted to, but I know that when we've talked in the past that when you add hard numbers to packages or to projects like that, that it could start creating like a ranking and like a competition. And I know that we're much more in sets is kind of what we're talking about. So yeah, and I know that we've talked about also in the past about how the criticality score, some people have problems with the way that score is generated as well. And I know that we don't want to really get into that. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. So this is referring more to using the criticality score with the ingestion engine or the okay. Very cool. Okay. And then I wonder, because I did see
So to give you like a brief rundown, what we're thinking is we'll pull that information. So when somebody makes a PR, we'll run the diff, we'll get the project they're talking about, we'll run that in criticality score, we'll get the information that we want, and then we would add that to the PR as a comment.
I see.
That's what we're thinking.
I see. Okay. And this would be for a way basically for someone to recommend a project. So
Correct.
if I say, hey, I think OpenSSL should be on the list of criticality or on the list of critical projects,
Correct.
then this tool will basically run that, get that information and add it to the PR as a comment so that we can use that as reference information.
Correct. The person that's going to review it or merge it has that information there. Because we've talked about, for example, what happens if, for example, there's a project that hasn't received a commit in a really long time. And yes, we also talked about what happens if this project happens to be something like Xorg that has a really strange commit history because, you know, it's been around forever. So yeah, so we're trying to get all of that stuff to paste that on there. Nothing is like, you know, like disqualifies anything. It's just supposed to be like the data so people could see how, I guess, in a certain way, like the health of that project, not as much as like, because I know that in the past we've had like suggestions about rating security and stuff like that. And I know we've talked also in the past about how we want to stay away from that with criticality score because we're really just measuring how critical something is to an ecosystem or to the ecosystem. So
Okay, wonderful. And yeah, it's definitely seeming like we'll use basically the GitHub repo as a way to really kind of keep track of this and keep track of changes, because yeah, I don't think I don't think the Google Sheet, I think it's good for maybe collecting that information if we wanted to, let's say, share it or display it. But in terms of kind of managing, you know, the process, I don't know if Google Sheets would be the best way, and GitHub seems to be effective in that respect.
And you can always schedule GitHub actions. So like, as I said, I know that there has been talk about how we're going to maintain this set of packages. Like, for example, if there's something there, it doesn't get a commit for a really long time. Will it still be eligible for being there? You know, and I know we've talked about, so there's all sorts of stuff that we could talk about down the line about how this list would essentially get maintained. Another thing I want to bring up that I've had conversations in other working groups is how this list affects them. Because
Right.
I know a lot of, like, for example, the CERT is like somewhat using this list as a preliminary set of projects to focus on. So I think that we should also be aware of that as well.
Awesome.
Rob has his hand up.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Hey,
please.
sorry to interject. This is Rob Underwood from Goldman Sachs. I'm the lead of the open source program office here. Just wanted to quickly, we've shared this feedback with the Linux Foundation a ton of times, but for our organization at least, and I think for others in our industry, Google, just Google Sheets, what have you, is a non-starter. Like we can't even access it. So I just wanted to put a plug in for GitHub, which we can use. So if anything that we can do to drive stuff towards GitHub or email and not so much on Slack or Google or like, you know, Google Sheets, I know they're super helpful, but for our, just speaking purely from our industry, and I think there might be someone from Citi on the phone as well, but Slack and Google Sheets are almost non-starters for our industry. So if we can use GitHub, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rob. I appreciate that feedback. And yeah, whatever is more inclusive, more people can use, the more people can gather, can derive value from. I'm totally in support.
Yeah, and
of.
we're and this is in no way meant to be like an expectation that everyone's needs to bend to our particular regulated nature, but just wanted to put that 2 cents in. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Randall.
That actually has come up before in Glossary, and the solution we came up with Glossary was to build a very simple front end, which is possible because we have Anthony on the phone, which is kind of the moving force there to do that Glossary. So if it is necessary to build like a front end that's not tied to anything, it is possible to just like, what we're doing in Glossary is that we're going to take all the markdown files, convert them into a YAML, and then use that YAML for the search for the front end. So that is possible. I mean, if we wanted to do that here, it is something to consider.
Wonderful. Thank you, Randall. Marco.
Yeah, on the line that Randall was talking, I imagine if wouldn't be possible in the future when I have like all the ingestion layer done to provide some API, small API or data feed that can be consumed by, let's say, 3D-party applications and this kind of stuff. So we don't necessarily rely only on a front end or on GitHub. Like people can consume into their own scanning or own systems.
That also came up, and we have a solution for that, which is a commit button. So from the front end, you can actually are going to be able to add glossary terms from the front end. However, there is a however, which is we're using GitHub authentication to sign these commits because they need to be verified. So that is one coinky dink to the issue that, yes, we can make a dialog box where you could like just fill out what you want to add. However, you still have to be signed in with GitHub. So I don't know if there's a workaround for that, but I know that that was suffice for the glossary team because they had a similar concern about adding things to the list and what happens if you don't know how to use Git or GitHub. And this was something that Glenn from SKF actually contributed. So yeah, I know it's not a full solution, but it's
Yeah, I was thinking more on a read only, like to consume the data, not necessarily to input the data. Like we can have our front end in the future to input the data if people are not use it to really open PRs on GitHub. So we can do that via manually via front end, but more in terms of consuming, like a small API that can allow us to retrieve the current set and filter out and this kind of stuff.
it is possible. It'd probably be fairly easy to do, but it is possible. I do a lot of work with the SKF project, which is our education platform. So we might have some stuff to make that work, but I will keep that in mind. Thank you for that, Marco. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, just let me know if you need help with development, anything. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad to help you.
Absolutely. I'll keep you posted.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, I'm looking at our repo now, and one thing that kind of it helps in terms of proof of concept, but it also kind of scares me a bit, is on the secure and critical projects repo, a decent amount of folks, a couple of folks, filed issues for projects that they are recommending, to be on this set of critical projects. And I like it because it's a way that we can see in a very transparent public way what people are suggesting, what their reasoning is, and whatnot. I just wonder if the thing that scares me a bit is if this grows quite a lot, I don't want to potentially have somebody dealing with hundreds and hundreds of GitHub issues. So I think about things like how really the process would look, and how we would make it in a way that would make our lives more efficient and easier, as opposed to maybe adding more I guess busy work, so to speak, where if someone just files an issue for a project and then someone has to manually go and add that somewhere or something. So I just kind of I thought I would open that up to the group in terms of any thoughts that come out of how kind of this would look process wise on GitHub, and any thoughts on how that could look or be set up or developed. I'd love to hear the group's thoughts on that.
I wonder if we could not like label or tag those issues. Like if you want to open an issue to include a project open under this label, maybe some automation can filter that out and convert to expected format. I don't know. It's just the first thing that came through my mind.
Okay, I like that.
I was also going to suggest a sensible issue template might help as well if you need to triage people or get them to, be careful about submitting a particular issue. But if you start to get a good number of, hopefully appropriately tagged issues, you can help you use GitHub Actions to process them and trigger other things off that. So it should be manageable from a data point of view and be able to automate around that. The other thought I had regarding people who may not even be able to access GitHub for any reason, if they need a read-only for the content that's in there, you could also publish a static site or a static endpoint on another place that can be hit, so that the read-only aspect could be even independent of GitHub if necessary.
I was going to say, so one thing that Caleb suggested was not accepting submissions through issues, that they have to be PRs. That said, another idea that we had was that we could leave the PR open for X amount of time. And then people that are quote unquote on the team or that have privilege could go in and approve it. And after it gets a certain amount of approvals, it could auto merge. And if it doesn't get approvals within that time frame, the PR would just close and it would need to be resubmitted.
Yeah, I just wonder. I'm okay with not accepting suggestions on issues as well. I think that's a first solution. I just wonder if just stating that would block people to do that, and won't left us with a ton of open-ended issues that can kind of jeopardize the process of checking real issues with the tooling or documentation.
Good point. Maybe we could start like a draft document, Amir, and start getting ideas, maybe like on a Google Doc about how the procedure would work. And that way we could have like something set on paper and then just go from there.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe until it's more or less finalized, we can keep using the current doc that we have, which I will share now. Because I also really like the idea, maybe if we used one of our sessions, you know, solely dedicated to making progress on this, and potentially even what's it called, building like a proof of concept or a very basic thing that we can iterate on.
Yeah, sounds good. I would recommend doing it when Caleb is also here. So maybe one of those later times.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay, let me just jot that down. Okay. At a APAC friendly time.
He's on Australia.
Okay. At APAC friendly meeting time. So Caleb. Okay. Okay, yeah, I like that. And I'm gonna put that down as a future topic idea. Looks like, yeah. Dedicated session to setting up process on GitHub. Possibly November 3rd. Okay. Great. Because as we've talked about, a couple folks have brought it up. There is I wouldn't say a lot writing on this, but there is, you know, this is informing potential funding, potential resources. And so if folks are relying on this, then I'd like to have something that we can provide for them, and that they can derive value from. So I think then for the next APAC friendly meeting time, which is looking like on November 3rd, we can dedicate, I would say, at least 30 minutes to really focusing on this and seeing what we can kind of start producing, if that sounds good with everyone. Okay, wonderful.
Also, Amir, there was the issue of where this is going to be on GitHub, because we talked about me just making a repo, but I think there was also the discussion about where this was going to live.
Okay, that's a good question. I would imagine it would live under the working group repo. Were there any, what's it called? Objections to that, or so you said some folks said it should be its own repo, or?
I think it should be its own repo because we're going to be doing GitHub Actions and a bunch of stuff like that. So I think it would be best to keep this to our working group and maybe make an ingestion engine type of repo under OSSF.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, if it's solely dedicated to that one kind of process and function, then maybe it warrants having its own repo.
Right. I'm in agreement. But as I said, I think that we should just come into agreement. Maybe next time we can have that meeting and yeah. If I need to email someone, I will, or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think it should be it shouldn't be an issue setting up an OpenSSF repo. So looks like we have some agreement on, yeah, maybe having it as its own repo. Okay. That makes sense. It certainly makes sense. And yeah, cool. Do we have any other thoughts on this discussion or this topic that anyone would like to bring up?
Is it thought that the ingestion engine might be running periodically, sort of as a GitHub action as well? Is this something that would just go out there and do its business? It's a bit in the technical weeds, but
That is the intention. Yes, I think the idea is that this is going to be kind of a living thing that will be that might change over time. That things might be added over time, things might be removed over time. So I think the more nimble that it can be, and the possibility, of again adding new projects or for whatever reason removing a project, I think that we'd be better off that way. If that makes sense. So do you have any thoughts on that, or
no, I think that makes sense. That's really good.
okay.
I know that we talked about like what happens after a certain period of time. Like once packages are in there, do they get to be in there forever? I know a lot of people had things to add about that and ways they felt. So I think it would be defined in the process later on. I think we would have to have consensus about what those types of situations are, because it is true. Like if you take something like the JavaScript world, it constantly is changing like at rapid pace. So it is a fair concern.
Yeah. Yeah, or something like Rust, where maybe a couple years ago folks wouldn't really think much of
Right.
it or see it being, a new standard almost. And then, things definitely do change. So I like the idea of being able to adapt to the changes in the ecosystem. Yeah. But yeah, you bring up a good point. Maybe if we can be a little prescriptive about, what that means, if we say, we're going to review this every year, as a work group to make sure, everything is accurate. Just building in some kind of quality control measures totally makes sense. So, and I think that is part of what this work group really is we're setting out to do, is helping identify these critical projects out there and to help get more, resources and funding for them. So yeah, definitely makes sense to be nimble. Okay, cool. So we've got about 15 minutes left. That was everything that we had on the agenda for today. I'd love to open up the floor to discussion, thoughts, feedback, updates, really anything that the work group would like to talk about. Wonderful. Looks like we have Jeff has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Amir. So I added it in the notes a little further up, actually, but a reminder that for our working group mailing list, we have an official one through OpenSSF now. This is actually like one of the oldest working groups before a lot of the OpenSSF infrastructure was set up, and it was done on Google Groups. So the Google group is theoretically deprecated. I know we had some spam on it recently. And I just asked Kim and Dan for ownership of the group so that I can kind of clean it up. But theoretically, that one's deprecated, although we're still using it for automatic access to this node stock. Because with Google Groups, I mean, with Google Docs, you can share them with the whole group, and you instead of, and that doesn't work with OpenSSF lists. So I don't know what we're going to do there. I'll ask some of the other groups how they handle that. But yeah, so we'll be using the official OpenSSF list as the mailing list. Feel free to ignore the Google group or set it to ignore. Any questions or concerns with that? Rob?
Yeah, I'm just going to add again, so Google Groups presents some issues
Yeah.
for our industry. And so the general way that we get around that is email is okay, right? So we can, send emails to a Google group and receive them. The one part that doesn't work is the subscribe piece, because when you do a subscribe through Google Groups, it then sends you a message back with that join button. And so you click the join button and then you get into the interactive web portion, and that's blocked. So when we want to be added to Google Groups, we actually have to have the group administrator manually add GS email addresses to that. So I just say that because if we were moving away to groups.io or something, some alternative to Google Groups, that would be, again, I think there may be somebody else from Citi or a couple other of the financial services companies here, but again, that Google Group web interface presents some blockers for us participating in the Google Groups and we can't use Google Sheets anyway. So, but again, in no way am I expecting everyone just to cater to our industry. Just it's just something that makes our participation in some of these efforts harder. And the policies for Morgan Stanley and JP and us and Citi are all going to vary from bank to bank. But in general, we're under a lot of scrutiny about the way we use electronic media and communication. So we have to be,
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I mean, this should hopefully be more inclusive for you using the OpenSSF list. So let us know if you have any issues with that. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff, for that update. Do we have anyone else?
I guess one other thing I would add is just we're trying to get more just generally engaged in more of the working groups. And I know I saw a colleague of mine, Barbara, is on the call as well. So, we're just trying to get more engaged, and thank you for all of the hard work that everyone's putting into it. It's a really important effort, and hopefully we'll get some more folks attending this working group and others. From our perspective, this is also important because we're trying to work to better align our open source contribution, the code contribution work that we do with our critical projects, right? So generally right now, contribution works at our firm that it's up to engineers. Like if you want to contribute to a project, it's sort of up to you. And so it's a little bit bottoms up, and that's great. And we're not going to discourage that, but we also want to start saying, okay, so let's look at our kind of from a Pareto perspective, what are our, most critical 100 or 200 open source projects? And then how do we get more engaged in the working groups and projects of those? And then in turn, be doing more pull requests and code contributions to those projects that were, so this group and its mission really resonates with us. So thank you for everyone who's been working so hard on this.
Of course. Yeah, the pleasure's all ours. We certainly don't do this for the glory, so it's really nice to be with a group of folks who really care about this stuff, and so I really appreciate that. And yeah, we're looking forward to the contributions, the thoughts, insights. Very much looking forward to that. Do we have anyone else? I thought I saw Jay raise your hand for a second, or I don't know if I saw that, or if my mind's playing tricks on me. Okay.
You saw the hand raised, but it was by accident.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Awesome. Awesome. Do we have any other updates from anyone? Oh, Aaron, you have your hand up. Oh, but you're muted.
That better? Excellent. Sorry, just echoing what was Rob just said there. I'm here also looking at where the needs are. If anybody in this group has particular needs or there's potential collaborations that we can help, coordinate or make happen, or there's data that would be useful, please feel free to reach out or just suggest. Be very happy to help bring other people in as helpful.
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron. Is anyone from the group going to be at KubeCon next week in Detroit? No. Will you be there, Jeff?
No.
No. Okay. Okay. Well, if anyone decides to go last minute, I'll be there Wednesday through Friday. So I was going to say would be happy to meet up with with folks in person if they'll be around. But should be a good conference. I know it's a oh, thank you. I know it's a very big one, and it'll be my first one, so I'm a little nervous. But it's all about I find the most value in the hallway track, so to speak, where we get to just meet with folks and talk to them and explore opportunities to work together and stuff. So
Your first conference post-pandemic?
my first KubeCon.
Oh,
Yeah.
your first KubeCon. Okay, got
Yeah,
it. Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
I was at the OSS summit in Dublin, which was really good. But yeah, still, post pandemic adjusting, and it's a lot to get used to. So
It was one of
okay.
it's one of my favorite conferences and one of the largest. First was in 2017, and I usually try and make it, but unfortunately not this year. But looks like it's a great place to connect with all parts of the community. It's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And we do a lot of work. So OSTIF, we do a lot of work with cloud native projects, CNCF projects. We essentially do almost all of their security audits. So it'll be really nice to see a lot of the folks you've only seen on a screen for years and then see them in person. So very much looking forward to that. And yeah, and I'll be sure to report back at the next work group meeting, any interesting things that came out of that. And yeah, okay. Well, I guess if there are no other updates, I'll do one more last call for any updates or insights, but otherwise we can have a couple minutes back in our day. And I just want to thank everyone again for joining today, and looking forward to the next meeting. Okay. All right, wonderful. Well, again, thanks everybody. Have a great afternoon, evening, and we'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.